Great. So welcome again to everyone who's watching the recording of the Local Food Purchase Assistance or LFPA office hours. We're looking forward to having you all here today. We'll go through a few updates and I will pass it off to Kira.
Thanks, Julia. Just a quick reminder, as Julia just said, we're recording the meeting for folks who couldn't make it, and we'll make sure to turn off the recording before the Q&A. We just did introductions. In a moment, I'll do an office hours overview, and Sarah will talk about check-in meetings, and then Julia will get a little more in-depth on the grant process and the quarterly report, and then we'll have the bulk of the time for a Q&A. So our intention and goals for office hours are really to provide quick updates on LFPA, answer questions, and really just make a space for you all to connect. We'd also really love feedback on this time, general processes, or anything else you feel would be helpful for us to consider or explore.
Great. And I will just give credit to USDA has been offering monthly office hours, which inspired this along with some conversations with folks. And it's been really lovely to get updates and have time to connect with the other states. So hoping that it flows into our conversations in Vermont.
Yeah, and we just wanted to take a little bit of time appreciating we have first-time grantees and we have folks who have had a lot of different experiences with grants. And like Kira and I are first-time grant administrators to kind of set the container for this specific program. In addition to the office hours, we will also be offering just an extended invitation throughout the project for one-on-one check-ins with our team. If and however that feels helpful, we're happy to do video calls, real phone calls in person, and get creative about how that can work. You should have all received, or someone on your crew received, an email from Julia extending a specific invitation for a one-on-one for a meet and greet for Kira and I, and that invitation also stands, just to offer a more specific space for more in-depth introductions than what we kind of summarized here. And we also, taking a little bit of a step back, just want to take the time to shape the space again. And we view our jobs to really hold the structure and the requirements of what USDA and at the state level is necessary to be in compliance with the grant. But beyond that, we really want to create space for you all to be able to, within the scope of your projects and the broader scope of your work, just do your work. So we are happy to have conversations, happy to get creative. We not being able to promise every and everything, but just communicating that we're really willing to figure things out and have those conversations. One of the things we wanted to talk about specifically was that we want you all to feel like you can shape how we support you and how we're in relationship with each of your projects. On the slide here, we have just some ways that our team has been talking about that. If you have preferred relationship protocols, what does support look like for you? It could be minimal communication, it could be maximal communication, it could be anything in between, anything that we haven't thought about. And then just naming that data collection and storytelling are both requirements and really nuanced. And we want to open up space for conversation about what feels comfortable for you, what doesn't, and what are best practices for us moving with you through that process. And then just explicitly state that we would love honest feedback on your experiences with the nuance of this grant and on your experiences of being a grantee as well. And also place that in a little bit of a bigger context of the three of us are working really intentionally to figure out how we can best disseminate this grant and coordinate it for future iterations. And also on a bigger scale at the Agency of Agriculture, we're having conversations about what does it look like to really figure out how we can make grants more accessible and more equitably accessible.
Great, thank you both. So I'm just going to go through a little bit of the nuts and bolts of the grant process just to provide a grounding, especially for folks that maybe this is their first grant with the state. Um, so briefly, a reminder that the purpose, this is a new USDA program that USDA is also being quite flexible with and really wants to learn from. So we're really excited to kind of offer Vermont's experience. So the real purpose of the Local Food Purchase Assistance LFPA program is to move local food from quote unquote socially disadvantaged farmers and producers to quote unquote underserved community members. We are, as Sarah alluded to, working within the confines of USDA definitions and rules and regulations. Hence, we are using these definitions, of which the full definitions, I'll link in the chat in the minute, are in the USDA paperwork. But a reminder that socially disadvantaged farmer or producer is a member of a socially disadvantaged group, i.e. discriminated on the basis of race, color, national origin, age, disability, etc. So while we really honor that it's very important to be buying from BIPOC farmers and producers around the state, it's not the only definition of socially disadvantaged. So a woman or theoretically a younger and older farmer or farmer with a disability would count toward this definition. And the spirit of the grant is really to be purchasing a majority of product from socially disadvantaged farmers or producers. Again, the USDA language may or may not be reflective of the language that you use in your communities or in your organizations. Similarly, underserved community member is intentionally quite broad. It's communities that are denied equity, such as Black, Latino, Indigenous, and Native American persons, Asian Americans, and Pacific Islanders, and other persons of color, members of religious minorities, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, etc. persons with disability, people who live in rural areas, etc. So both of these are quite broad, and we really give full autonomy to the organizations to make decisions about how they are quote unquote screening for both of these. We will never ask kind of which part of the definition somebody falls under. There is a little bit of a requirement in the reporting to say yes or no for some of for the farmers or producers. If you have questions about this, I understand it. Language is difficult at times. We're really open to conversations around how to best make this work for your organization while still really serving the spirit of the grant. And then just a reminder, finally, that there are multiple award rounds. So we received our initial $500,000 for Vermont last summer. We started with 5 organizations last fall. We put out a competitive grant round last winter and awarded another 9 organizations this past spring. We have received an additional about $500,000 for kind of round 2 of LFPA. So we will be putting out another competitive grant round this fall that will be pretty similar to last year's kind of requirements and timing, if you will, for the next from spring of 24 to spring of 25. So we'll get into more of those details. We're in the process of really finalizing what that looks like. But we wanted to also place the context that we're really trying to learn from last year, what worked well, what could be improved upon. As Sarah said, how to try to really continue to increase our outreach, our communications, and make this as equitable a process as possible. So always open to feedback, and we'll have some more formal kind of solicitation for feedback if anyone wants to share. Again, a reminder, hopefully everyone has seen their grant agreement. So this is your really legally binding document with the state that outlines what the project is going to be, what you are, allowed to do with the funding. This is our guiding document. You're not able to deviate from this without prior approval. We are incredibly happy to have conversations about if changes need to be made, if you realize that like you actually want to do this a little bit differently, or you need to pay more for staff or increase the mileage or kind of do a different project, we're very open. It's actually a pretty easy process to make an amendment and change this. We just need to have the conversation first so that we don't get in a situation where you're making a purchase and we realize later that it's not an allowable cost, and then you need to cover that money. So it's really protection for you. So please reach out kind of if you have any questions about making any changes. And again, we're really happy and willing to be creative to make it work for you. So just a reminder to bond with your grant agreement. So attachment A is kind of the outline of the scope of the work, the budget. It also has all the reporting questions and timeline. Attachment B has the payment schedule, which we'll go over. Attachment C is all the state legalese, and attachment D is all of the kind of other program requirements, such as the USDA rules. So it is important to be really familiar with that, and please reach out if you have questions or need support understanding those components. Everyone's grants will end at the end of March 2024, which wildly feels like it's going to come right up on us very quickly. So just a reminder about claims and reports. Again, some are familiar with this. So there are 3 times that you can make a claim. So a claim is a claim for payment of requesting, the part of the grant money that you're allowed to be getting to do your work. So the first claim is when you sign the grant agreement, when the project officially starts. Everyone has done that. You should have that initial 45% in your bank account, and you're able to, spend that. The second claim is tied to a quarter report. So it's basically the quarter report that's kind of halfway into your project. So when you submit your October of this year, 23 quarter report, we will review it, make sure that it all looks good. Everything's basically on track. We've talked about any changes, and then we'll email you to submit a claim on web grants, as Melissa alluded to. And then we try to approve that ASAP. So that's going to be for the next 45% of your grant. And you need to report out in a narrative way about what you've spent, but you don't need receipts or kind of proof of what you're going to use that next 45% for. The final claim, we want to flag that this is the last 10% or the remainder if you haven't quite spent all the money. That is tied to the submission of your final quarter report, which is due in April of 2024. 2 weeks after the project officially ends. So again, you'll submit that claim. It's going to be a tiny bit longer than past ones because you're going to be kind of summing up the project and lessons learned. We will approve that as quickly as we can, and then allow you to make that claim for the last 10%. But that 10% you do need to front. That is really a true reimbursement. So that's different than the first 2. Just a few tips for success. So please let us know ASAP if your staff contact changes or if folks need different types of communication. Like sometimes there's a financial person who really just needs to know when the claims are due and they don't need like the updated farmer interest form, for example. Again, reach out ASAP if anything changes in your project or budget, or you want to know if something, could be an allowable cost. Again, we're super flexible. We just need to have the conversation first. Please be familiar with the quarter report timing and plan time in your schedule at the beginning of the month following each of the ends of the quarters. Do submit your claims on time for fast processing. We really try to get those done ASAP. And please save all invoices, receipts, timesheets, etc., for the expenses related to what you're using the money for in case of an audit. And then lastly, super fun quarter reports. Again, many of you have done these, but many of you just got started in March and really didn't have anything to report on in April. So this is kind of the first formal one. So again, why? It just offers some updates to us to kind of see where you're at, how things are going. We love to hear stories or see pictures or see how things are working on the ground. We're also legally required to submit our report to USDA, so we need the information from you to be able to compile that and get that to USDA. When? So that's by the 15th of April, July, October, and January. for the full cycle of your grant. You're welcome to send it earlier in the month if you are feeling super organized. As I said, the questions are all listed in the grant agreement. There's a few extra for that middle quarter report in October that's tied to claim 2, and the final report in April of 24 that's tied to the final claim. But hopefully it feels pretty self-explanatory and you'll get in a pretty good system each quarter. And then how we will send detailed instructions via email. There's 2 parts of it. There's a Word document that's a narrative and a budget of just telling us what you've spent the LFPA funds on. We don't need any information about the other parts of your project. We really just need to know what you're spending the LFPA money on. You're welcome to let us know if there's any kind of extra information, but there's no match required, so we don't need kind of proof of the other funding. The narrative for that will offer, I think it's like maybe 4 questions. Your answers can really be bullet points. It doesn't need to be, long paragraphs or, formal like grammar or anything. We just want to kind of get a sense of how things are going for each of those 4 realms. And then there's an Excel sheet, which is hopefully a straightforward purchase and distribution. So we've purchased these carrots from this farm, and we've purchased, strawberries from ourselves as the farmer. And then on the distribution tab, we've distributed it via RCSA, or we've sent it off to the food shelf on this date, et cetera. Happy to share a screen of what that looks like, and also happy to kind of do a one-on-one if folks need to know what that looks like for their project. Great, so I think that was it for now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to stop recording, and I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to get us going for Q&A.